I was a police officer in a small town, doing night shifts mostly. I'd seen strange things, but nothing like what happened last year. It was a night I'll never forget. My name is Mike, and I'd been working at the station for 10 years. There were stories, rumors that the old part of the station was haunted. I didn't believe in ghosts, not until that night. The old wing hadn't been used in years, and it was just a dark, empty hallway now, with dusty cells and creaky doors. One night, we got a call about a missing person. A man named James had disappeared without a trace. His wife was in tears, saying he had left to pick up groceries and never came back. I took the report, thinking it was just another case, but there was something odd about her story. She kept repeating that he'd vanished near the station. I tried to reassure her and began my patrol, keeping an eye out for any signs of him. Around midnight, I was at my desk when the lights flickered. I figured it was just a power issue, but then I heard it, a whisper. It was faint, like someone was calling my name from far away. Mike. It sent chills down my spine. I looked around, but the station was empty. My partner was out on patrol, and the dispatcher was in another room. I shook it off, thinking I was just tired. But then I heard it again, this time louder. Mike. The voice was coming from the old wing. I knew better than to go back there alone, but curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my flashlight, took a deep breath, and started walking down the hallway. The air felt heavy, like something was pressing down on me. My flashlight flickered as I moved, casting strange shadows on the walls. I reached the end of the hallway, where the holding cells were, and that's when I saw him. A man was standing in one of the cells, his face pale and his eyes empty. He looked familiar, and then it hit me. It was James, the man who had disappeared. But there was something wrong with him. His eyes were blank, staring straight through me, and his mouth was twisted into a strange smile. "Help me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I froze. This couldn't be real. I tried to step back, but my feet wouldn't move. It was like I was rooted to the spot. James reached out through the bars, his hand trembling. "Please, help, Mum." I finally snapped out of it and stumbled backward, dropping my flashlight. It rolled across the floor, casting wild beams of light as I scrambled to pick it up. When I looked back at the cell, James was gone. The cell was empty and there was no sign of him. I ran back to the main part of the station, my heart pounding. I didn't tell anyone what I'd seen. Who would believe me? I tried to put it out of my mind, but the next night, it happened again. This time, I was sitting at my desk when I heard footsteps coming from the old wing. Slow, dragging footsteps, like someone was shuffling along. I grabbed my flashlight and went to investigate, but as soon as I entered the hallway, the footsteps stopped. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" No response. I took a few more steps, and then I felt it, a cold hand on my shoulder. I whipped around, but there was no one there. The hallway was empty, but the air felt icy, and I could swear I heard breathing, close to my ear. That's when I heard him again. James's voice echoed down the hallway. "Help me." I didn't wait this time. I ran back to the main part of the station and locked the door behind me. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, that empty stare and twisted smile. Over the next few weeks, more people went missing near the station, and every time I'd hear their voices calling out from the old wing. The other officers started noticing it too, but no one wanted to talk about it. It was like an unspoken rule: don't go near the old wing at night. One night, I was sitting at my desk when I felt something strange, a sudden urge to go back to the old wing, like something was pulling me there. I fought it, but the feeling was so strong, almost like a command. I stood up, grabbed my flashlight, and started walking down the hallway. As I reached the holding cells, I heard them. Voices, whispering, pleading, calling my name. The cells were full, men and women, all with the same empty eyes and twisted smiles. They reached out to me, their fingers grasping through the bars. "Help us." I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen, trapped by their gaze. And then, I saw him, James, standing in the corner watching me. He smiled, and in that moment, I understood. They were trapped, all of them, stuck in that dark hallway, unable to leave. And somehow, I was connected to them. I was part of their prison. The next thing I knew, I was back at my desk, my flashlight in my hand, my heart racing. I don't remember leaving the old wing. I don't remember how I got back. But the voices, they never stopped. I still hear them every night, calling out from the old wing. And now, I understand why no one ever goes back there alone. My name is Officer Tom Wharton, and I've been with the department for 15 years. I've seen my fair share of horrors, things most people only hear about on the news. But there's one case that still haunts me, the one that makes my skin crawl every time I think about it. It started on a night shift in October, a little past midnight. The streets were quiet, but the radio crackled to life. I heard dispatch talking about an unusual complaint. A call had come in from the old Willow Street apartments, a place that had been abandoned for years. The caller was listed as unknown. But what was strange was that the caller had reported someone standing in the window of the third floor. That's where things got weird. There was no way anyone should have been in that building. It was boarded up and condemned years ago after a fire took out half of the top floor. I didn't want to go alone, so I called in my partner, Officer Jenny Lee. She'd always been the brave one, always the first to volunteer for any kind of eerie call. But even Jenny looked nervous when I told her we were headed to the Willow Street apartments. We drove in silence, pulling up outside the building. The air felt heavy, thick with something I couldn't quite place. All the windows were shattered, except one on the third floor, where we'd been told someone was seen. And sure enough, as we watched, we both saw the silhouette of a person staring down at us. But there was something wrong with that figure. It was too still, too dark, like a shadow had come to life. Jenny turned to me, her voice barely a whisper. "You see that, right?" I nodded, swallowing hard. "Yeah, let's go." We entered the building through the broken front door, our flashlights cutting through the dark, stale air. Inside, the walls were peeling, and the place reeked of mold and rot. Each step echoed through the empty rooms, bouncing off the walls like whispers. We moved slowly, checking each floor, every hallway, but found nothing. When we reached the staircase to the third floor, a sudden chill hit me, freezing me in place. "Tom, are you okay?" Jenny asked, putting a hand on my shoulder. I nodded, though I didn't feel okay. Something told me that whatever was on the third floor wasn't something we should mess with, but duty called. We climbed the stairs, our footsteps loud in the dead silence. At the top of the stairs, we saw it, the doorway to a room with that one intact window. The figure was gone now, but the chill in the air was worse than ever. I could see my breath misting in front of me. We walked toward the room, and when we stepped inside, our flashlights flickered as if the batteries were dying. "Who's here?" I called out, my voice shaky. But there was no answer. The room was empty except for a single chair in the middle, and on that chair was a picture. It was old, black and white, with a thick layer of dust on it. Jenny picked it up and shined her light on it, then gasped. In the photo were two people. They were in police uniforms, our uniforms. And one of them looked exactly like me, the other looked exactly like Jenny. We stared at each other in shock, not understanding what we were seeing. My heart pounded as I tried to make sense of it. The uniforms looked old, but the faces were unmistakable. It was us, standing side by side with empty black eyes that seemed to stare straight into our souls. We need to leave," Jenny whispered, her voice trembling. But as we turned to go, we heard footsteps coming down the hallway, slow, heavy steps that echoed in the silence. We froze, waiting, our hearts racing. But we didn't see anyone. "Let's move," I said, pulling Jenny toward the door. We hurried down the stairs, not looking back, not daring to breathe too loudly. The footsteps followed us all the way down, echoing until we burst out of the building into the night. We ran to the car, not saying a word. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that figure in the window again. And there it was, standing in the same spot, watching us with those empty, dark eyes. Neither of us ever spoke of that night again. We never went back to the Willow Street apartments, and whenever a call came in about strange sightings there, we passed it off to the next shift. But I still think about it sometimes, about that photograph with our faces staring back at us. Sometimes, late at night, I dream about those empty eyes. And every time I do, I wake up with a feeling I can't shake, a feeling that whatever was in that building still hasn't let go of us. I've been a cop for nearly a decade now. Most of the time, the job is routine, traffic stops, noise complaints, breaking up bar fights. Nothing that shakes you up too much. But every once in a while, you get a call that sticks with you. The kind you don't forget, no matter how much time goes by. This was one of those calls. It was late October, close to Halloween, and I was working the night shift. The air was cool, and there was a thick fog that hung low over the streets. It was so quiet you could hear the hum of streetlights buzzing above. I was patrolling the outskirts of town, near the old county road, when I got the call. Unit 5, we have a report of a disturbance at the abandoned Miller farmhouse. Suspected trespassers. Approach with caution. I sighed. The Miller farmhouse was an old, rundown property about 10 miles out. No one had lived there for decades. I'd heard rumors about the place, about strange lights and sounds at night, about shadows that moved on their own, but I brushed those off. I didn't believe in ghosts or spirits. When I pulled up to the farmhouse, the place was even worse than I remembered. The wood on the walls was splintered, the windows shattered. The wind whistled through the broken panels, making a low, moaning sound that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I parked my cruiser and stepped out, flashlight in hand. "It's the police. If anyone's here, make yourself known." My voice echoed, but there was no answer, only silence. I stepped forward, shining my light through the broken windows. The inside looked as abandoned as the outside. Dust everywhere, broken furniture, walls covered in peeling wallpaper. As I stepped onto the porch, the wood creaked under my weight. Just a quick look around, I told myself. I didn't expect to find anything more than a couple of teenagers fooling around. But as soon as I entered, I felt it, that heavy, oppressive feeling in the air. It was like the house didn't want me there. I forced myself to move deeper inside. My flashlight cast long shadows across the walls, and every step I took seemed to echo. I checked the living room, the kitchen, nothing. But then I heard it. A faint sound coming from upstairs, like someone dragging their feet across the floor. "Hello?" I called out, but again, no answer. Against my better judgment, I started up the stairs. Each step creaked loudly, and the air grew colder the higher I went. I reached the top, and the hallway stretched out before me, lined with doors that led to the old bedrooms. My flashlight flickered, which made my stomach drop. I gave it a shake, and the light steadied. The sound came again, this time from the room at the far end of the hall. I took a deep breath and made my way over. The door was slightly open, and through the gap I could see something moving, a shadow shifting back and forth. I pushed the door open, and what I saw made my blood run cold. In the middle of the room was an old rocking chair, and sitting in it was a figure. It looked like a person, but they were dressed in a tattered, dirty nightgown, their skin pale and stretched tight over their bones. The figure rocked back and forth, making that dragging sound as the chair scraped against the floor. I tried to speak, but my throat felt like it had closed up. I forced out, "Ma'am, are you all right?" The figure stopped rocking. Slowly, it turned its head to look at me. Its eyes were wide, empty, staring right through me. And then, it smiled. A twisted, unnatural smile that sent a chill down my spine. I stepped back, trying to keep my composure. "You need to leave this property. It's not safe here." The figure didn't respond. It just kept smiling, its eyes locked on mine. And then, in a voice that was barely more than a whisper, it said, "They're coming for you." I didn't wait to find out who they were. I backed out of the room, nearly tripping over my own feet. I turned and bolted down the hallway, back down the stairs, and out the front door. As I ran to my car, I heard something behind me, a faint laughter, echoing through the house. I jumped into my cruiser, slammed the door, and sped away, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't look back until I was miles away, back on the main road. Only then did I let myself breathe. When I reported the incident, I left out some details. I didn't mention the figure in the rocking chair or what it had said. I just wrote it off as a case of trespassing that couldn't be confirmed. But I knew what I'd seen, and I knew that I'd never be able to forget it. To this day, I avoid that stretch of road, especially at night. I don't know what I encountered in that house, but whatever it wasn't human, and I have a feeling that one day I'll hear from it again.